You ever notice how the world gets uncomfortable when someone's not playing by its rules, when someone isn't chasing status, followers, or fame, but still walks with power, purpose, and peace? That's what Muslim discipline looks like. It's quiet, it's consistent, it doesn't need a spotlight, but when it shows up, it shifts the room, and that's what scares people. Because in a society built on freedom without boundaries, someone living with self-control, structure, and submission to something higher. That's not just rare, it's revolutionary. Let's just say it straight, discipline is not something people want to be told they need anymore. In a world where comfort is sold in every form, where distractions are engineered to keep you soft, the idea that someone wakes up before sunrise every single day, washes up, and bows their head to the ground, not once, but 5 times a day is mind-blowing to a lot of people. It doesn't fit the narrative, it disrupts the system. That kind of structure, that kind of commitment, is intimidating in a society built on options and excuses. Think about it. In the West, people struggle just to keep a gym schedule. People are setting reminders to drink water, to breathe, to unplug from their phones for 5 minutes. And then they look at this group of people, millions of them, who are fasting for 30 days straight, sunup to sundown, no food, no water, no complaining, and they're doing it with calm, with reverence, with purpose. That kind of discipline, that shakes people, because it's not just about religious rituals. It's about what that kind of lifestyle builds: control, resilience, focus, the ability to say no to desires. The ability to delay gratification, that's power, and power that doesn't rely on external validation or trends makes people uncomfortable. It doesn't need to prove itself, it just is. That's why it's feared. See, Western culture has moved toward hyper-individualism. Do what feels good, live your truth, everything's about you. But Muslim discipline, it flips that on its head. It says, submit to something greater than yourself. It says, you're not the center of the universe. It says, control your desires or they will control you. That doesn't sit well with a system built on selling you more of what you crave, and let's be honest, there's a fear in the West of anything that's too strong, too unified, too committed. The minute a group shows high levels of structure, morality, family values, mental toughness, and spiritual clarity, people start throwing around words like extreme or radical. But let's call it what it is, it's discipline. And deep down, a lot of people respect it, but respect quickly turns into fear when they realize they can't control it. This isn't about politics or race, it's about energy. It's about people who are grounded in a code, not swayed by every wind that blows. People who aren't afraid of struggle, people who train their souls like others train for a marathon, and when the rest of the world is melting down over Wi-Fi speed and social media drama, that quiet, composed strength. That unshakable calm, that self-mastery, yeah, that becomes a threat. Because here's the kicker: discipline exposes weakness. When someone sees a person who can wake up at 4:30 a.m., pray, work, fast, serve, love, and stay humble, while they can't even resist a donut or stop scrolling for 5 minutes, it hits something deep. It's a mirror. It's a reminder of what we could be but aren't willing to become, and instead of stepping up, people project, they criticize, they fear what they don't understand, but fear is just respect with confusion. Deep down, the world respects that discipline. It admires that strength. It envies that clarity. Because when the noise dies down and the hype fades, the ones who are left standing are always the ones who mastered themselves. Discipline isn't flashy, it's not loud, it doesn't post itself on social media, but it's powerful. It's the quiet force behind people who don't flinch under pressure, who don't break in chaos, who don't chase every impulse like a dog chasing a car. And when people look at Muslim discipline, especially from a Western perspective, it doesn't just confuse them, it confronts them because it reveals what they've lost. It reminds them of something ancient, something solid, something built on submission to something greater than self. And that alone shakes the foundation of a society built on individualism, instant gratification, and self-worship. Here's the reality. When you have a people who pray 5 times a day, no matter what, it forces you to reevaluate your own habits. When you see someone who fasts for an entire month, controlling every desire, not for diet, not for trend, but for the soul, it hits something primal. It makes you look inward and ask, what am I even doing with my time? Because Western life is noisy. It's fast, it's built to keep you distracted from your own emptiness, but Muslim discipline creates stillness, it creates rhythm. It builds people who can hear themselves think, who can feel their conscience again, who can unplug from the system and reconnect to something unshakable that scares people. Because real control, the kind that can look a craving in the face and say no. With no audience, no applause, that's rare and it's powerful because it's internal. It doesn't need a reason to exist, it just is. That's why when you see someone get up before the sun, wash their face and put their head on the ground in worship, even if you don't understand the theology, something in you respects it or fears it. Because it's foreign to how most people live. Most people only move when there's pleasure involved. They only resist when there's a reward. But Muslim discipline is different. It teaches resistance as a way of life. Not to earn something worldly, but to train the soul. This kind of lifestyle doesn't play into modern Western narratives. It doesn't sell you happiness. It doesn't tell you to follow your heart. It tells you to purify it. It tells you to rein in your ego. It tells you that freedom isn't doing what you want, it's mastering what you don't. And that message, it doesn't just clash with the mainstream, it disrupts it. Because in a world where everyone's trying to be their own God, to be told to submit, to surrender is offensive, but it's also revolutionary. Because surrender, when directed toward truth, becomes strength, the system fears what it can't control. And Muslim discipline isn't controlled by capitalism, pop culture, or public opinion. It's rooted in something deeper. It's a code, a way of living, a spiritual blueprint that says, even if the whole world is falling apart, I will stand firm. In that mindset, that spiritual armor, that clarity, it's not just rare, it's threatening, not because it harms anyone, but because it reminds the world that power doesn't always look like dominance. Sometimes it looks like restraint. Sometimes it looks like silence in a noisy world. Sometimes it looks like humility when pride is the norm. What people don't realize is that discipline like this isn't just about personal growth. It's about legacy. It's about passing on strength, structure, and values that don't decay with time. It's about building something in the soul that no war, no media, no system can take away. And maybe that's the real reason it's feared. Not because it's dangerous, but because it's unbreakable. It's the kind of strength that refuses to bow to trends, that doesn't compromise under pressure, that holds its ground while the rest of the world folds under temptation. And that strength doesn't shout. It speaks for itself. There's something about unwavering commitment that makes people uncomfortable, especially in a world that glorifies flexibility, compromise, and choice. When people see a group of individuals who pray at specific times every day, who fast from sunrise to sunset for an entire month without fail, who live with a deep sense of obedience and accountability, not just to society, but to God, it rattles them. Because it exposes something. It reveals how far people have drifted from self-control. It reveals how easily comfort has become a god. And when you're used to living in a culture that caters to desire, anyone who has learned to master theirs seems extreme. Western culture is built around indulgence. There's a pill for every discomfort, a screen for every silence, and a product for every craving. The idea of discipline feels almost unnatural. People are praised for being authentic, even when their authenticity is really just a lack of boundaries. But when they look at Muslim discipline, they see a lifestyle built on boundaries. A lifestyle that says no to the self, not because it's weak, but because it's strong enough to do so, and that type of strength doesn't just get noticed. It gets questioned, it gets labeled. Because when someone lives by principles that can't be bought or swayed, it makes those who live by convenience feel exposed. The fear doesn't come from aggression or harm. It comes from the fact that someone could have that much control over themselves. That someone could live day after day not chasing pleasure, but chasing purpose. That someone could shape their life around prayer, not around productivity. That someone could say no to what the world says yes to, and still find joy in it. That kind of mindset is foreign in the modern West, where success is measured by status, speed, and self-satisfaction. But Muslim discipline flips that script. It says success is measured in patience, in faithfulness, in consistency. This difference is more than cultural. It's philosophical. It challenges the very framework of how people live. Because if someone can wake up before dawn every single day for prayer, what excuse does the rest of the world have for not being able to keep a simple promise to themselves? If someone can fast for 30 days without even drinking water in the heat, what does that say about the person who breaks under the weight of temporary discomfort? That's why it's feared, because it holds up a mirror. It shows what's possible, and not everyone wants to see that there's a quiet strength in discipline that doesn't seek validation. It doesn't need to post about itself. It doesn't ask for praise. It just moves steadily, humbly, with intention. And in a world addicted to noise, silence rooted in purpose is threatening. In a world ruled by impulse, restraint feels unnatural. But it's in that restraint that power is built. It's in those early mornings, those silent prayers, those unseen sacrifices that the foundation of an unshakable life is formed. And that foundation can't be cracked by criticism or trends or cultural pressure. Western systems often rely on control, controlling what people consume, how they think, what they believe, but Muslim discipline doesn't operate under that influence. It's anchored in something beyond public opinion. It doesn't shift with the seasons. It's rooted in centuries of tradition, in divine instruction, in a code that doesn't bend to convenience. That's what makes it so hard to understand. And that's what makes it powerful. People can argue theology all day. They can debate beliefs, politics, history, but they can't deny results. And when you see someone who lives with real discipline, real peace, real clarity, something inside you pauses. Something inside you watches, because deep down, everyone knows that mastery over self is rare, and those who have it walk differently, speak differently, think differently. And that difference becomes a quiet challenge to everything the world has normalized. There's a kind of strength that doesn't need to be loud to be heard. It doesn't walk into a room demanding attention, but you feel it when it's there. It's the kind of strength that's built, not bought, developed through repetition, commitment, and sacrifice. That's the kind of strength Muslim discipline produces. It's not about outward appearances or chasing perfection. It's about internal order, about aligning the body, mind, and soul with a higher purpose. And in a world that's constantly shifting its values, changing its rules, and redefining its truth, that kind of order is rare. And rare things are either deeply respected or quietly feared in the West. People are taught to prioritize themselves above all else. Comfort is the ultimate goal. Freedom is redefined as doing whatever you want, whenever you want. And so when a group of people live by a system that says true freedom comes from submission, that real strength comes from self-control, it clashes with everything society is being taught. It's not aggressive. It's not loud. It's not forcing itself on anyone, but its very presence is disruptive. It makes people stop and think, even if they don't want to, because it goes against the grain of what they've been sold their whole lives. It's easy to mock or criticize what you don't understand. It's easier to call something rigid or extreme than it is to ask yourself why you're so uncomfortable in the presence of discipline, because discipline demands comparison. It holds up a mirror and asks, what are you doing with your time, your energy, your life? It doesn't have to say a word. Just watching someone pray consistently, fast intentionally, speak with restraint, live with direction, it starts to challenge the very way you see your own decisions. And for people used to chaos, that kind of stability can be unsettling. Western society markets freedom, but what it often delivers is addiction to screens, to sugar, to sex, to validation. People are given permission to indulge every desire and call it liberation, when in reality it's just another form of bondage. And so when they see someone who can delay gratification, who can say no to temptation, who doesn't need external applause to feel whole, it doesn't make sense to them. Because it exposes a lie. It shows that there's a way to live that doesn't depend on constant stimulation and shallow pleasure, a way that's deeper, a way that's older, a way that works. What most people don't realize is that this discipline isn't random. It's not just habit for habit's sake. It's anchored in something divine. It's part of a blueprint that's been passed down for generations. And it's survived war, colonization, slander, and propaganda. That's part of what makes it so powerful. It hasn't faded, it hasn't diluted. In fact, in the face of pressure, it gets stronger, and that kind of unbreakable consistency is threatening in a culture where most values change with the news cycle. It's not just about individual habits either. It's a collective mindset, a culture of accountability, a rhythm of life that includes community, worship, charity, reflection, and growth. It's holistic. It's built into daily life, not added in as an afterthought. And it doesn't need a crisis to activate it. It's always present, always functioning, and when that kind of discipline is witnessed from the outside, it's often misunderstood. People assume it must be forced or fear-based. But they miss the point. They don't see the peace it brings, the clarity, the structure, the deep sense of meaning that comes from knowing exactly why you do what you do. It's easy to fear what you can't influence. And Muslim discipline isn't moved by trends, algorithms, or peer pressure. It doesn't bend to culture. It doesn't need permission to exist, and that's what makes it stand out. Not because it's flashy, but because it's firm. Not because it's loud, but because it's lasting. And when everything else starts to crumble, when identity, morality, and purpose become negotiable, people start to look for something that doesn't shift with the wind. And that's when they start noticing the ones who have been standing firm all along. There's a power in silence that most people overlook. In a world dominated by opinions, broadcasts, and digital noise, the quiet steadiness of someone who knows who they are and what they live for stands out like a flame in the dark. Muslim discipline doesn't come wrapped in ego or performance. It doesn't scream for attention or flex for the crowd. It moves with a purpose that's deeper than applause, guided by something that doesn't come from this world. And when you're immersed in a culture where everything is built on validation, that kind of inner power feels unfamiliar. It's not just unfamiliar, it's intimidating. People often fear what they can't control, and Muslim discipline isn't easily influenced. It's not based on shifting trends or popular opinion. It doesn't care what's viral or fashionable. It's built on a system that's been consistent for over 1,400 years. That kind of consistency is rare today. In a world that thrives on change, on reinvention, on moving fast and forgetting faster, anything that lasts becomes a quiet rebellion. And Muslim discipline is that rebellion. It's the refusal to let time, place, or pressure rewrite the terms of faith, identity, or purpose. That refusal, that unapologetic clarity, makes people uneasy. When someone chooses prayer over productivity, people question their priorities. When someone fasts not for weight loss but for purification, people question their logic. When someone forgives, restrains their anger, gives to the poor, wakes before dawn to pray while others sleep, none of it fits the modern definition of success. But that's the point. Muslim discipline isn't built for modern validation. It's built for timeless results. It's not for the algorithm. It's for the soul. And when people are disconnected from their own souls, they can't help but be disturbed by those who aren't. Western fear of Muslim discipline isn't about danger. It's about disruption. It's about what happens when people start seeing a different way to live, one that doesn't depend on trends, money, or power to have meaning, one that doesn't need likes or followers to feel secure, one that's rooted in prayer, fasting, study, family, community, service, and inner stillness. These aren't just rituals, they're anchors, and in a world that's drifting fast, anchored people make others feel exposed. Because they've traded distraction for depth, and that's not something you can fake. It's not that people in the West haven't tried discipline. It's just that they've often tried it disconnected from the divine. So it burns out, it becomes a means to an end, usually success, status, or self-image. But when discipline isn't grounded in something higher, it becomes another form of self-worship. It folds when things get hard. But Muslim discipline doesn't fold, it endures, because it's not just about willpower, it's about surrender. It's about knowing that you're accountable not just to yourself, but to your Creator. And that accountability produces something far more resilient than motivation ever could. What scares people isn't the beard, the prayer rug, the hijab, or the Arabic words. It's the unwavering focus, the refusal to be molded, the sense of direction that can't be bought. When someone has a code they won't break, a schedule they won't abandon, a set of morals that don't adjust with convenience, it's either deeply respected or quietly resented. Especially in a culture where most people are one hard moment away from collapse. Discipline reveals that difference. It's not about being better, it's about being rooted, and roots scare people who have none. Discipline isn't glamorous. It's not always exciting, but it builds what trends can't: character, stability, and long-term peace. And when you witness someone who's built their life on discipline, who knows how to wait, how to sacrifice, how to walk away from temptation, you start to wonder what kind of inner strength that requires. Not the kind of strength you can perform, the kind you live, the kind you build in the dark, long before anyone sees it. And when it finally shows, when it finally breaks through all the noise and chaos, people notice. Some are drawn to it, others are afraid of it. But no one can ignore it, so while the world may misunderstand it, resist it, or even fear it, Muslim discipline continues, unshaken, unbothered, and unbreakable. Because it doesn't need permission to stand firm, it just needs purpose, and when that purpose is rooted in faith, guided by truth, and lived with consistency, no amount of noise, fear, or misunderstanding can silence it.